got into access, it's good to spend a good while in access. I'd say 10, 15 minutes. That's what I mean by a good while. Just to establish the samadhi. Yeah. So when we've got when we've got to access, we've got to sort of get there, and then just remain with whatever object you're focusing on, the breath object, the area of the breathing, or just the whole sense of the body, the breathing body. Yeah. Then you can sort of just deepen the samadhi, so that when we then turn towards the first dhyana, there's more samadhi, and therefore you don't lose it. When you go onto that more subtle object of pleasure, there is a tendency to, you can wobble at that point and lose it. So, according to Lee Brastington, the longer you spend in access, the deeper the samadhi that you develop. Now, as I said yesterday, it's very important to realize that access is basically the absence or the abeyance of the whatever they're called, the hindrances. Yeah. So the hindrances are in abeyance. Now, it's quite possible for that to happen very, very quickly. Yeah. If there's sort of some kind of major proliferation going on, or if there's a strong emotional proliferation, then it can be, it can take longer, and you may need to use a certain amount of effort to let that go. But if generally, if you sort of manage to keep fairly sort of contained last night and this morning, and you haven't been kind of checking into things that might cause proliferation, then you might find that you can just sort of notice that the hindrances are not, they're just not here. So it's like you're already in access. So I'm just saying that so that you can be open to that possibility, because you can make the assumption that you've got to sort of work with the breath for some time before access will emerge. So it's worth just sort of, even in that initial just sitting, just opening to, is access here already? In other words, are the hindrances, more or less not here? It's said that there are still some subtle hindrances in access, but we don't really need to worry about that. They will be dealt with simply by remaining in access for 5, 10, 15 minutes, which is what we'll do. Anyway, after that, we'll just do a bit more exploration around the other rupa dhyanas again. And then I don't know what the timescale for this will be, it just depends on how it all pans out, but we'll explore the body again in terms of finding spaciousness. We'll find spaciousness or space in the body and in the other sense fields. And that will be a basis for beginning to move into the formless dhyanas. And of course, the first one of those is boundless space. Space, the word for space being akasha. Yeah, so akasha is space. I do believe that in Sanskrit, they've had to invent words for modern things like aeroplanes, and you've got akasha rata, which is literally sky chariot is the Sanskrit word for aeroplane. Yeah, so there's a bit of very useful information for you. Anyway, it's akasha, space, yeah, and the sense of it being boundless. So that is the sphere of the first arupa, and then there's boundless consciousness. We might even get as far as no thingness, but let's see. I do also want to, I hope, give a bit of time to using all this samadhi and jhana for the purpose for which it was intended. And this goes back to Prabhakara's question, yeah, because it's not an end in itself. We can enter into these states, or at least some of them, and they're very, I mean, not only are they very, on the whole, pleasant states in which to be, but they do provide a kind of the term used in the suttas is pliability of mind. The mind becomes very clear and pliable. It's not sort of overrun by kleshas. The kleshas are the afflictions are not there. Fundamentally that's what the hindrances are. They're afflictions. So they're not there. And so there is a clarity, there's a presence, there's a capacity to look, to explore with awareness, or with the discerning quality of awareness. And that does enable us to begin to explore what's really going on. In other words, to begin to move into the area of prajna or vipassana, both of which can be translated as insight. Prajna is also translated as wisdom. Yeah, so typically, I mentioned this yesterday, that would start by a contemplation of impermanence, and you can always do that after any dhyana practice. So just, I'll suggest a way of contemplating impermanence. And who knows, we might even have time for the other two lakshanas. So in other words, it's going to be a fun-packed day, and we'll see where it all goes and how far we actually get. That's just what I'm imagining, how far we might get. Okay, so let's just do a first meditation to settle into access and get a bit of samadhi going. So with your basic comfortable posture in place, just sit. And just sitting means just letting it be whatever it is. There's no attempt to change or manipulate any kind of experience that's happening, including whatever's going on with the mind. It's also just a way of arriving in our being as it is now, getting a sense of where we may be in terms of moving towards access. So bringing your awareness to the sensations of grounding, contact with the seat and the floor, depending on however you're sitting, but generally having a sense of the pelvic floor, the legs and the feet. And checking that awareness is present right there in those sensations, right here, in these sensations. And just letting go of any sense that you're up, in, or around the head, looking down at this. In fact, if you do have a sense of a me or an observer in the head or around the head, you could just sort of let it sink down. Just have a sense of that me or that observer floating down through the body, down to become one with these sensations of contact with the seat and floor. And then just gently bringing lift into the upper body. So you could use the method of breathing up that we used yesterday, breathing down into the earth, into the space of the earth. And then on the in-breath, it comes up again, right up through the core of the body to the top of the head and even beyond. So you could do a few breaths that way. The other method that also can work is the sky cord, the subtle thread that's, you imagine, is attached to the top of your head, and just gently, very gently lifting. So either of those will do. Check the alignment of the head using a sense of whether the chin is too far in or too far out. And also the general alignment of the upper body, or the balance of the upper body, looking for poise. And then scanning through from the top of the head downwards, just identifying and letting go of whatever holdings or contractions or tensions you can actually release. Letting go of the tensions, but not letting go of the sense of the lift, the energetic uplift of the body. Check that the breathing is now natural, not holding on to any stronger breathing. And just see it initially as the whole breathing body, whole sense of the somatic sphere. And at this point, you can discern just what's going on mentally, primarily, and in relation to that, what you need to do in terms of your object. You may want to just remain as the whole body breathing, the whole body breathing. Or you may prefer to find a focus, a more narrow focus in the breath in the lower abdomen, maybe the heart, maybe around the nose. Just be clear what is going to be most useful. And also just check in as to whether hindrances are already in abeyance. Use just as much effort as you need and no more. Is there presence in the object, or are you present to the object? If you started with a more focused area for your object, and you find that you're now settled into access, you can, if you wish, make the object broader. You can bring it out to the whole breathing body, as in stage 3 of the mindfulness of breathing, if you wish. And then again, if you've been in access for a little while, you could start becoming aware of the whole body and looking for any sensations of pleasure, any sense of pleasure in your experience, even if it's not exactly somatic. And then letting the pleasure itself be the focus. If you're finding it hard to find any distinct pleasure, remember you can just very directly open the heart to metta, which could give rise to pleasant sensations. And also the inner smile can be helpful. is there, or can you contact a sense of happiness? Kind of contented happiness. So it's always about being present in what's right here. If you notice any expectations or sort of moving towards a particular state, a dhyanic state or whatever it may be, just come back into presence in what's right here. Now relax and let go completely. Let go of any effort. Notice what happens when you let go of any effort. Okay, well, feel free to move your legs, or just move. Okay, so yeah, any observations from that practice, or anything you'd like to share, or any questions that you have? I mean, maybe, I don't know, some of you might have meditated in between these sessions, so just anything that came up for you that you'd like to ask about at this point. And don't forget to unmute if you do want to say something. Oh.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Did you say something at some point, I was quite a long way away, about being present with or present to?
Yeah.
Can you say a bit more about that, please, Tejananda?
Sure, yeah. So you're present, I'm using that term presence or present in to mean that the awareness is right there in whichever sensations you're focusing on, rather than a sense that you're up in the head and and we do have this, habitually we live in our heads, and of course there are lots of sense fields in the head, so it's quite natural in a way to feel that you're up there, so to speak, relative to your object, which may be down there. Yeah. So if you're aware of it in that way, you feel separate from the object, you're observing it. Now, I mean, that's okay, it's a start, but what you're looking for is to be right present in the object without a sense of a separate observer. In that way, your awareness is more, so to speak, unified, unitary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to check the wording. Thanks very much.
Okay. Hi, Dot.
Hi, hello. I see colours, and today they started straight away.
Hmm.
And it was helpful what you said yesterday about them, because I get hung up on looking at them, and I didn't today.
Good.
And I ended up feeling tingling on my forearms.
Yes.
And that happened yesterday. That I just thought that's a first for me. So
oh, good. You mean the tingling on the forearms is a first? Yeah. Good. Well, I mean, that was that a pleasant tingling? Was that, could you use it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So that's the way to go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Any other observations about what just went on?
Hello.
Hello.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, you're never quite sure if people can hear. I feel as if I'm sort of naturally quite with everything you're saying. There's a persistent feeling which got sort of enacted in reality, which is that something will come and interrupt in a very big way. So you're in the way of awareness and the body, and particularly being with the actual, being in the actual offense, getting there. But then a sort of feeling of dread comes around. And what happened just now was that somebody came and banged on the door and kindly delivered something. But I couldn't get over, then that's something real that actually is very, very physical, experienced very physically, a very loud noise. And that can happen in other places. So I thought I'd just mention it, and perhaps other people have feelings like that.
Yeah. I mean, that is a good point. we can't do much about basically loud noises suddenly happening. Here we sometimes get low-flying jet planes. They just suddenly happen. Now, it can be disturbing, and I mean, if you do
it might
find
be something dangerous. I mean, there's something around which it isn't dangerous, but there's something comes in that this might be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's quite a lot in that, because of course it might be, and our psychophysical system has evolved to react to potential dangers. Yeah. So it's like if that happens, you can just sort of notice that that's what happened. It's just the psychophysical system doing what it does, and it's just as well that it does, because otherwise we'd probably all be dead by now. Yeah, already. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
And just know, okay, this has happened. There was this response. So there's no blame, is what I'm getting at. If you start getting into, I mean, I'm not suggesting you do, but I'm saying this more generally. If you start, that shouldn't have happened. Well, it should have happened, because it did happen. Yeah. So whatever's happened has happened. And then you can just sort of reestablish your posture and, notice the sensations that are coming up in the body in relation, and the thoughts that are coming up in relation to what happened. And you just become re-embodied. Yeah. And
Re-embodied, yes.
Re-embodied, and just let the sensations, the sensations themselves will begin to dissipate. Yeah. And, as long as you don't set up a samskara of thoughts feeding feelings, and feelings feeding thoughts, then, you'll be able to return into a sense of presence again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can relate to what Susan just said.
Yes.
I tend to, when I'm feeling the body and, being in my body and with my breathing, it's like I feel as if it doesn't really get me anywhere. It's not that I'm not present, but then I start to connect with a feeling of gratefulness for this moment and this opportunity.
Yeah.
Then I really feel that I'm getting there, so to speak, that I really have this feeling of being totally present, feeling the breathing, my body, and a great gratefulness. And then I also had this feeling of that I felt like totally vulnerable.
Yeah.
This feeling of that you are opening up. So it's like, yeah, I got that feeling as well, that something happens, or if, you feel unprotected.
Sure.
So I can really resonate with that somehow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and indeed, those are quite common feelings as well. I mean, for people generally, but especially, when you're in quite a sensitive state, let's say, which is what we're deliberately cultivating here. And it's like the mind can always think, well, the mind does think, because again, it's part of its evolved function. This may happen, that may happen, anything can happen, the sky may fall down, whatever. It's just like, this is what the mind does. So what you can do at that point is just recognize whether those thoughts are valid in terms of your circumstances or not, or whether it's just a kind of fear or anxiety response. So, we are all always in a situation of unpredictability. Yeah, I mean, we, generally our lives follow fairly set patterns, and nothing particularly disturbing happens, but sometimes it does. But if we live from a kind of feeling that oh, those disturbing things could happen. We're just disturbing ourselves. You know, it's like when it happens, we'll deal with it. When it's not happening, you know, we don't need to be worried about it, really. Yeah, it's just a habit that a mental habit, an emotional habit that we've got into. So yeah, but I mean, that's quite a big thing. I think that's a very, very common, you know, very common mental state. You know, and especially, you know, for people these days, it's kind of, you know, there is a lot of anxiety about, and you know, it's important to address it, because actually it doesn't help the situation. It doesn't help at all. Yeah, all it does is maintain anxiety. Yeah. Oh, I won't go any further into that, but I think you get what I'm getting at.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, pleasure. Okay, any more?
Did I hear something?
Hello.
That's Anthony. Yeah.
Hello.
Right.
Being with pleasure in this way is a bit of a revelation to me, actually. I feel like I don't know if I've missed something over the years, or if this is a new, yeah, it's just very new to me. And I am getting very concentrated or going into samadhi in a way that I have never really managed to, or very sort of erratically or intermittently. I've never quite known how I've got there. So my experience when we were meditating just then is I was in access concentration fairly quickly, and then I moved into something deeper, but I don't know that it was the first dhyana. I didn't have the sensations particularly of pretty, although there was a sense of happiness and contentment and calm. But I didn't particularly have many physical sensations, maybe a little tingling in the hands, but nothing home about. I was just I couldn't really work out where I was, but it was very pleasurable, and I in it somehow.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know how, I couldn't quite work out where I was, really, that's all.
Yeah. Well, you were definitely absorbed, I would say, but it's possible, as I said yesterday, it's possible, and many people do go straight into the second dhyana, and you know, the strong priti doesn't happen. You know, so you might notice some sort of you know, what you might call weak priti, which is more like you know, a sense of the pleasant somatic sensations, you know, energetic sensations are there, and a sense of happiness is there, and you know, contentment probably. Yeah. So if you notice all of those qualities are there, then yeah, you're somewhere between the first and the second, in all probability. Yeah. So but the main thing is just, if you're there, don't at the time worry about where you are. Just be where you are, and you know, sort of try to stay there. I mean, one thing I haven't explicitly said, but which is quite important, is that once you know, let's say once dhyana factors begin to be there, of whichever dhyana, those are what you know, if you like, the sum total of those is your focus now. So it's like if you started by, you know, you use the breath to get to a point where you're in access, you can then find pleasant sensations to focus on, and then when that actually goes into a dhyana, you don't focus on the pleasant sensations anymore. You focus on the qualities of the dhyana itself. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. That's quite important.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
It's Andy, if it's okay to speak. My experience was very similar to Sachitakan's, in that I experienced pretty, but it just sort of happened, and that's pretty characteristic of my limited experience of dhyanas.
Yeah.
But what was noticeable, it was when you said to drop the effort. That's when it happened, but when effort was made to sort of stay with it, it just sort of went.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of those little ironies of life. So it's like you've let go of effort, and it's happened. You know, whatever it might have been. Yeah, let's say things deepened, and it's like then in comes desire. Yeah, to keep it as it is, and it's the desire which you're back in a hindrance basically straight away, and that kind of destroys the state that you were in. Yeah, so it's very subtle. Just let it be. Always let it be whatever it is. And you're just using a very subtle effort to, or even virtually no effort. Just it's there. It's there. I mean, you can also bear in mind that it's not going to be there forever because these states are not permanent states. Yeah, but at the same time, it's there. So it's a question of just relaxing, allowing. This is here. This is here. I mean, you're not saying it, but that's where you are. And then you notice whether you can just get a sense, oh, a little bit of desire is coming in here, or it's trying to well up, and just detach from that, let go into just what's here.
Tejananda?
Hi.
Hi, it's Sanamati.
Hi.
Hi. Just a question carrying on from both of those two then. I'm wondering, does it matter then? Does it matter which dhyana it is, or knowing which dhyana it is? Or is that something that just maybe comes with more experience and more time dwelling in them?
Yeah. I think it doesn't matter at this stage. It's just like all we're about is getting into a dhyana, or into absorption with sufficient samadhi to sustain it for a while. As you explore, if you have the conditions in which you can explore this further, then you'll find that you can begin to identify the particular qualities of the dhyanas, or especially of the first four, and you've got a sense of what is needed next in order to, if you want to go deeper into a deeper dhyana, what is needed at that point. So that does build up, but it takes time, and it takes experience really, just to get a sense of what's emerging. But I mean, it is quite useful to have a general sort of sense. Okay, with first dhyana, you'll definitely have a sense of priti and sukha. More or less, the priti is to the fore. With the second, the priti goes right into the background, and there's more a sense of contented happiness, you could say. With the third, priti disappears altogether, and it's a kind of you could say it's a deeper contented happiness, but without any priti. And there's a nice analogy, which actually, I mean, when I read Lee Brassington's book, I realized that I'd been mixing my dhyanas up, or at least he was identifying, you could say, the symptoms of them differently than I was. I had a sense that the third dhyana was like going into a deep cave. And the fourth was opening out into more spaciousness. But I've realized if what he's saying is, and I'm sure he's a lot more experienced at dhyanas than I am, it's like he uses the analogy of the third being, as it were, at the entrance to a cave, or just at the lip of a well. He uses that image as well. And there is that sense of containment coming in, but it's not like you're deep. And then with the fourth one, it's like going much more deeply into that. So with the third, there's just a sense of pervading happiness and a sense of containment, but not in a constrictive sense. But with the fourth, it's more like you're going deep. and you can actually feel there's a great sense of peace, equanimity, and and he says the body can really slump at that point. Your body can literally slump. So I've realized that I was mistaking the fourth for the third, and what I was getting with the what I thought was the fourth was actually I was entering into the first arupa of boundless space. Yeah. So I mean, that took me time to work out, and it's really helpful to have information from various people who obviously have really specialized in dhyana and really know what they're talking about. And I haven't read all the books on this, but I just find Lee Brassington he's very readable. He can be quite amusing, and he tells a few stories, a couple of which I mentioned yesterday, or he uses nice analogies, and he's very informative both on the experience level and on the level of scholarship, and what his interpretation of what the suttas are saying about dhyana. So it's just like, well, if you can get information from different perspectives, and I mentioned Daniel Ingram, Kenneth Folk, their teacher, I remembered his name was Bill Hamilton. He came up with the idea of hard and soft dhyana. Yeah. So it's like all of this is useful if you can feed it into your practice, and it doesn't just remain as conceptual knowledge.
Great, thanks.
So Kacharaja here, Tejananda.
Hi.
So today I kind of went on where I left off yesterday. So there's quite a lot of kind of contentment and happiness and stuff. But I caught myself just starting to sink and drift. It's a little bit of torpor was kind of setting in.
Yeah.
And yesterday, like certainly in a couple of the sits, I just sort of nodded off. But actually today, I kind of caught that. And what happened is, as if I sort of straightened up a fraction. And then I don't know if there was like a tiny flash of intentionality, but it was almost as if there was like a kind of sudden intensification of light or energy in my kind of visual field.
Yeah.
And it wasn't blindingly bright or anything, but there was definitely an intensification. And then that whole kind of made me feel more expansive and more awake. It was interesting that I thought there was, it was a little bit, it wasn't just arbitrary, that didn't just happen. It felt like through just ever so slightly straightening up, there was like a degree of intentionality.
Yeah.
Kind of brought it into being. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, well, definitely. That's why it's useful. Those various elements of those more subtle elements of posture that I've been leading into at the beginning, really checking into them, and in a sense establishing that as that is your posture, including the sense of lift, the grounding, the poise, alignment, and relax. So all of those you can just check in from time to time, and if you notice any sinking or drifting beginning to creep in, it's good just to bring awareness back to the whole body and the whole posture as you did.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, there's always more time. Oh yeah, go on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
It's all right.
I maybe also wanted to pick up on that because I feel it was something similar, but maybe a bit more basic, where I was getting into quite good access, I felt, of concentration in the beginning. But as I relaxed, it also there was these flushes of tiredness or stupor coming in. So I wasn't really certain, or maybe it was a judgment thing, like, am I ready now to move on or not? But as I tried to find some pleasure, it actually helped, or it seemed that I was ready, or I could, it gave me some energy.
Yeah.
So for me, I found it interesting that maybe I shouldn't judge too much if I'm ready to move on or not, or
it's if you mean mentally judging, then
I don't know. I was like, I'm just getting these flushes of almost falling asleep, but I must have been ready because I don't know.
So the mind really didn't have much clue. It was just like it's doing what it does and commenting. But if you're present, I mean, even if you're feeling a bit sleepy, it's like, okay, and what Akasha Raja said, it's just like, if you just straighten or find lift again, or do a few up breaths or whatever, it can go. And also, if you find pleasure, that stimulates awareness, and you're off again.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of chat going on. What's happening? Okay, I think all questions are answered. Yeah, somebody's done it for me. Prabhakari, thank you. Good, yeah. I'll put together a bit of a reading list. I'm not quite sure how I'll get all of the stuff that I'm recording and maybe a couple of handouts out to you, but I would like to be able to email just some recommendations for reading and stuff like that. Maybe one or two little articles. I mean, by the way, there's some good stuff on Lee Brassington's website, but I'll mention that when I send something out. There's quite a lot of useful information. Okay, well, how are we doing? So let's just do another meditation, about a 20-minute one, and then we'll have a break. Just sitting. If you sense that you're kind of in or around the head, then one thing you can do, I mean, you can bring your awareness immediately to the sensations of grounding, but you can also let the awareness sort of ride down on an out breath. Have the out breath going down and then bring your awareness down with it. And then the sensations of grounding. And then either using the image of the sky cord to bring lift, or breathing down, right down into the energy of the earth, and on the in-breath that comes up through the core of the body. Check alignment of the head in particular. and the poise of the upper body. And then just relax everything that can be relaxed. And sensing the whole breathing body and getting a sense of where you are right now in terms of hindrances or access. And finding the appropriate focus, broader or narrower. Or of course, it could be metta if you wish. So if you can directly contact metta, then you can use that as your focus. And as soon as the hindrances are not there, not active, you can continue for a while, if you wish, with just establishing the degree of samadhi. Or you can start making pleasant sensations the focus. And just try to get a sense of your intuition about what is most appropriate right now. Don't forget the inner smile if you find that helpful. And even if Priti isn't particularly arising, look for a sense of contented happiness. And if you can find that, let that be the focus. So it's fine if you have got that sense of contented happiness and there's no tendency towards the hindrances at all. You can stay with that. Or you could give more awareness to the sense of contentment. You've got this phrase, stillness, simplicity, and contentment, and that's where we are, or where we're headed right now. Although it's a vibrant stillness. And the contentment can become a sense of kind of peaceful equanimity. You may also find that awareness is tending to move downwards in the body progressively. So I'm just pointing out possibilities here, and it's important to be where you are, where you actually are with this. Now let go of making any effort. And let go of any impulse to hold on to what's here. Just let it be what it is. And just recall, be aware that all of these states are transitory. There's no possibility of holding on to anything that is conditioned. So we'll have a break and resume at 10 to. 10 to whatever hour it is in whichever country you're in. Okay, we'll make a start. So, I've left you a few hints to work with the first or second dhyanas, maybe a few hints which might direct you deeper. Don't know if anyone's got any observations from that last meditation. Did anything emerge that hadn't emerged before, or did something re-emerge which had emerged before?
I'd say Tejananda.
Hi.
John. I felt like I went backwards. I'd gone from the second and I went back to the first. You mentioned yesterday that with the soft, the soft methodology that you mentioned, can I revert? Yeah. I mean, is that something really that, that's within the realms of possibility, or was it just not at the first?
Yeah, no, it's well within the bounds of possibility. You can do it deliberately, and so it's recommended once you can identify the qualities of say the 4 rupa dhyanas, you can sort of go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can go back 4, 3, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 2, 1, and you can just zonk up and down them just to get more used to developing more pliability, really, mental pliability. So yeah, I mean, that would be a relatively advanced practice, but with soft dhyana, you can actually get a sense of that, and you don't have to be a sort of super meditator, just a sufficiently committed meditator.
Tejananda.
Hello. Sandra.
Hello. A phenomena that arose yesterday very slightly was very prevalent in that last meditation.
Yes.
And that was a sense of smell. Particularly noticeable for me, as the eyesight is diminished, the hearing is diminished.
Yeah.
And my sense of smell is almost nil. It was neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but it did seem to, as I breathed it in, provide lift.
Yeah.
It's just a peculiar phenomena.
Yeah, well, it's unusual, but it's like anything can happen, really. And as long as you can bring, in a sense, bring whatever arises into the path. I mean that's recollects the teaching from Padmasambhava. It's just like bring everything to the path, and if the path is the path of becoming absorbed, then it can contribute. Yeah, if it can, obviously, if it's what's the word? Hindrances. I keep forgetting hindrances. If it's hindrances, it doesn't contribute. But you can discern directly whether this is going to be useful or not for just becoming more absorbed.
All right, thank you.
Any other?
Yeah, just to share then, I got to a place which I didn't expect to get to really, and I had a situation arise which was like from 25 years ago. It was a very unpleasant experience. I went on for weeks at the time, and I just didn't expect that to come up. I just no way. It's not something that's been on my mind for probably 20 years.
Yeah,
moved on from the place where I worked, where it happened at the time, shortly afterwards. And I was just, we're coming to the end of the meditation now. I sort of wanted to stay there really in the place, but I was trying, well, not trying, but I was just wondering how to let go, or how to deal with the memories that were still there, and the strong feelings and recollections that were arising. If it's still something I need to like just forget or ignore, or or deal with.
If you say you haven't really thought about it for a long time, or it hasn't come up for you, then it might be that it's presenting itself so it can be seen and let go. Yeah. So it's just like, well, okay, there's this memory. Obviously, there could be trauma, embodied trauma around it. And if you can just sort of notice the feelings and bring awareness into them with metta, and just sort of be with those feelings, you might find that they begin to, just the feelings themselves begin to intensify, and then they release. So that's one way in which we can let go of embodied past traumas. Because when we're in any kind of traumatic situation, we do tend to sort of contract around it, and those contractions tend to become locked in, and they just become part of our somatic experience, really. So there are various methods for releasing them, in terms of psychology, many useful methods, but in terms of meditation, I think it's a question of doing what I just suggested, trying it, and seeing whether that just releases any sense of holding to those memories. The memories themselves won't go away, but the sense of holding to it, or it being any kind of current issue, will drop away.
It's the feelings that around them, isn't it? Yeah, let go of the feelings. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, good. Okay. Okay, so if there's no more questions, so I'd just like to spend the last half hour beginning to establish the conditions for what we're going to do this afternoon, which is looking at going into the arupa spheres. Now, I mean, generally speaking, it's thought that the arupa dhyanas, or the arupa spheres, are kind of very advanced, and it might be that you've read stuff, or you've got a view that well, if you haven't even experienced the rupa dhyanas properly, what hope is there for the arupas? But this is wrong. It's not true. You can actually enter directly into the arupa spheres without going through the Rupa dhyanas. I mean, it does help to go through the Rupa dhyanas, or at least some of them. But this is something I picked up from reading one of Analio's books called Compassion and Emptiness. He makes the point that in that practice, the emptiness aspect of it, it involves going into the arupa spheres. And he makes a distinction between arupa sphere, or the experience of an arupa sphere, and a dhyana, around the arupa sphere. In other words, the dhyana would be much more consolidated, and there would need to be a lot of samadhi to really enter into that deeply. But he's implying that the sphere of, say, boundless space or boundless consciousness is much more straightforward to enter into. And I mean, that has been my experience. It is actually much more straightforward to enter into. And especially for me, I mean, the way I've discovered it most effectively is through the body, through somatic awareness. So that's what we're going to do right now. We'll do a meditation in relation to the body, the soma, and explore in terms of space, and then we'll bring it into some other sense spheres as well, just to explore our experience of space or spaciousness, or you could say dimension or volume, in terms of our direct experience of, first of all, the body, and then maybe some of the other sense fields. Okay, so just set up your comfortable posture. And then, as usual, don't start practicing, just sit. And then let the awareness come to the sensations of grounding, or breathe them down, breathe awareness down into those sensations if you find that a useful method. And be in those sensations. So the whole of the legs and the sort of pelvic floor, buttock area. Could include the whole pelvis. And then the breathing up, or using the sky cord image to find lift in the upper body. Alignment of the head, the chin. Poise. And then letting go, releasing whatever tensions you can let go of. And have an awareness of the whole sphere of body experience, using sphere figuratively, not literally. The whole range, the whole realm, the whole cloud of body sensations, including the breathing. So if possible, just re-establish access with this awareness of the whole breathing body. But if you need to, you can use a more narrow focus, a more one aspect of the breath, one area of the breathing. Be directly aware of whether hindrances are present or not. So if the hindrances are in abeyance, at this point we're not going to go into Dhyana, so just stay in access and let that be a sense of presence in the whole somatic sphere, the whole sensate body. So be aware of the whole cloud of sensations. Or you could say a swarm of sensations. But just all of the different body sensations happening right now. And just noticing the various qualities. You know, some are more intense, some are more subtle. And there are various degrees of Vedana in terms of it being pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And there are qualities like warmth and coolness. And notice to what extent you can experience them as energetic or vibrational, tingly to various different degrees. Or you could be experiencing it more as a sense of aliveness. Now notice that the body, the sensate body, has dimension. There's an experiential sense of dimension or space in which these sensations are arising. So this kind of relates to why I use the metaphor of a cloud of sensations. They're like a cloud insofar as a cloud has internal dimension. And we can actually feel this internal dimension. So it means a kind of mental shift from regarding our experience of the body as that of solidity or heaviness towards experiencing it as spacious. And the sensations themselves are just sensations. So we can attribute heaviness or pressure, say, to the sensations around the seat and the floor, contact with the floor. But they're not inherently heavy in themselves. They're just a certain quality of vibration, a certain quality of sensation. So it means letting go of some habitual mental framing and literally seeing it, feeling it in a different way. There is actually this sense of space of the body, volume. Now bring your awareness to the edges of this cloud of sensations. And see whether the cloud metaphor also works here, insofar as the cloud doesn't have any distinct boundary. If you're in a cloud or in mist, you don't meet a boundary as you move out of it. It's more a kind of gradual fading out. So can you get that sense with your immediate experience now of the somatic cloud? It just kind of fades out. But does the sense of space just stop? The cloud is in the middle of the sky. And by analogy, can you get a sense of space both inside and outside without any boundary? You can be aware of the sense of space and the sensations simultaneously. Does the space itself have a boundary beyond the cloud, which is your somatic experience? Can you find a boundary to the space? Okay, now keeping a sense of that spaciousness, if you've got it. Now bring your awareness to the sphere of hearing, the sphere of sounds. And notice that there is also a sense of sounds arising in dimension, in space. Now the mind we'll want to identify some sounds as inside me, like bones creaking, or inner ear sounds, or stomach grumbling, and other sounds as outside, maybe sounds in the room, sounds in the house, and then sounds coming from outside. So that's what the mind does. It identifies and labels. But in your experience, are there any such boundaries? Or is there just a unbounded sphere of sounds? Okay, and now experience the space of the body and the space of sounds as one space, a space in which body sensations and sounds are arising. And potentially you could include the other sense spheres as well. It's like sights are arising in space, even when your eyes are closed. And smell and taste is arising in space, if it's happening at all at the moment. There's even a kind of sense of a mental space in which mental activities arise. In practice, it's probably enough just a good sense of the body space, somatic space, and the space of sound. Okay, and then just let go of attending to anything in particular. Okay, we've only got a few minutes left, but any observations there?
Can I ask a question, Tejananda?
Sure.
you've just described a state that that's most familiar to me. And I think I hadn't realised that this was one of the dhyanas, because I tend to go into this state quite easily.
Yeah.
2 questions. One, I wasn't sure where my heart was in this. And the other one, at one point, the sphere of sensations, the sphere of the phenomenon experienced, sort of seemed to shrink away into a more expansive nothingness, and it wasn't unpleasant. It's just it changed.
Yeah. Well, and what we just did, although it might have gone, you could have gone into boundless space, but it was more a preparation for that. So there is a sense of a space of the sense fields, and that's quite natural. We usually don't notice it, because we don't orientate our awareness in that way, but it's there. Once you've noticed it, then there it is. It's known. So yeah, it's perfectly natural, and you can use it as a way into boundless space. I've forgotten what your second question was.
About the heart.
Oh yeah, the heart. Well, I mean, if you're in that sense of boundless space, one thing you can do is just go say, where is the heart? And I mean, my experience is that it's in the middle. It's right in the center of everything. But that's is open to your experience. There is a sense of there can be a sense of me in the middle of it all, but it doesn't have to be a kind of a sense of the sort of the entity me. There's just a sense of there is a center to it, and that center is, for me, it is the heart, especially what I call the deep heart. But yeah, it's there. It might just not be showing itself.
Can I also ask about Vipassana questions? Because when I've experienced this, I tend to drop in the question about impermanence or insubstantiality. Is this something that we do, or is this a separate thing that you're not encouraging at the moment?
I'm not encouraging it at the moment, because that's what I'm hoping to go into later this afternoon. only to that extent, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So any other observations?